There it goes.
Well, do you want to change the title of the YouTube?
No, that's what I want to save it as.
What's this one called? We are good, so we can mute that.
Recording.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the February 28th, 2024 BAR large meeting in the public meeting room here at 2 George Street. My name is John Robinson. I'm the chairman for this evening's proceedings. Other board members present this evening are Luda Sobchak, James Metters, and Seton Brown. City staff present are BD Wortham Galvin, our city architect, Lawrence Courtney, our staff architect, and Travis Galley, our preservation planner. The applicants who will be presenting tonight have been required to submit any documents and materials in advance of this meeting. Applicants are reminded that staff will control the slideshow by asking Lawrence to advance to the slide you wish us to see. You may use the clicker that is at the podium at your own peril. Let's see, anything that the applicant has submitted by the required deadline that meets our submittal requirements will be available to the applicant. Applicant, staff, and board members are required to give their name when speaking. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the City of Charleston Public Meeting channel on YouTube. Your appearance here is your consent to being recorded. The order of the meeting and each presentation will be as follows. There will first be an introduction and overview of any given project by city staff for the benefit of the board and for the public. This is followed by the applicant's presentation, which has a 10-minute time limit unless extended by the chair at the request of the applicant. This is followed by any and all questions the applicant by the board or staff at that time. Any and all presenters, when presenting, should clearly state their name for the record, and the person affiliated with the project, be they the architect, owner, developer, designer, or other consultant, should speak during this portion of the meeting rather than the following public comment. The applicant's presentation is followed by the public comment period. This is part of a public meeting format. Written public comments were due yesterday at noon, and they have been disseminated to the board. They will not be read into the record unless deemed necessary by the chair. Any member of the public with us tonight who wishes to be heard on any agenda item is welcome to do so. They need to approach the podium, identify themselves, and state their address, and they are reminded that there is a 2-minute time limit for those remarks. Members of the public appearing tonight are also reminded that comments related to zoning, parking, traffic, and lot coverage, as well as livability concerns, are not the purview of this board due to our administrative law concerns, should not be a part of public remarks. Those comments related to aesthetics and the standards that the board does apply in its review are welcomed. The public comment period is followed by city staff comments and recommendations. This in turn is followed by an applicant's response period of up to 5 minutes. The applicant should not feel the need to use this time if they don't feel that a significant response is warranted. This is in turn followed by board discussion and a vote on each agenda item. At this point, the applicant's presentation is over. Public comments have been closed. The applicant may clarify inaccurate information when recognized by the chair by raising their hand and waiting to be called upon. Board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments and their votes on potential motions. If a board member makes a motion, the chairman will reread it verbatim. If the board member making the motion notices that I have been incorrect in my restating it, they should correct me for the record. Once a motion is in proper order and seconded, each member when voting should say yay in favor or nay not in favor for purposes of clarity on their vote. Any results of our agenda items this evening will be posted on the city website, which is charleston-sc.gov/BAR. There are no agenda items that have been withdrawn or deferred. The minutes have technically been deferred until our next regular meeting, so we won't have a procedural vote on those. We have no written public comment this evening. As a final reminder before we get started, please turn off all cell phones and other potential disruptive devices. And with that, we have agenda item number 1, presentation led by the city architect. Freeze on us.
Thanks for trying.
You did.
It was good.
Click on the slide.
Okay, very good.
Okay, our first applicant is 143 Calhoun Street. It's a Category 3 building that dates from 1907 in the Old and Historic District. They're requesting conceptual approval for renovations to restore the building envelope, create an accessible entrance, reopen some existing windows, and renovate the interior for tenant use.
Very good. Who's here for the applicant? Oh, I'm sorry, I had context.
We have the overall context aerial. Front of the building. Sort of rear of the building. And now we're looking down Calhoun to see the context. And now looking west on Calhoun.
Very good.
Thanks, everyone. I'm Ashley Jennings. I'm the architect on the project. With me tonight are some of the members of the Columbus Building Company that in the building. This building is the home of the Knights of Columbus in the city of Charleston. You've seen an application previously for this project, and we're back tonight to ask for a consideration of a different type of solution for accessibility to the building. I'll go briefly over the initial information about the building. Of course, it's located on Marion Square. This is the building as it exists today. And as you can see, there's some things that need to be addressed pretty soon. There's some deterioration to the brick pointing on the front of the building and some places that the building needs to be maintained with the windows. This is the front stair, and the reason that these slides are in this presentation is because right now the front stair doesn't meet code, and we are not proposing to make it meet 100% code, but there are going to be some issues with the location of the doors at the top of the stair to make the stair more safe. These are the Sanborn maps. The building was built in 1907. And it's basically stayed the same since 1907 with the exception for the removal of a area on the roof that was part of a proscenium, the top floor. And here you can see some historical photos from the top left. That's the structure that was there previous to the Knights of Columbus building. Then you see the dedication in 1907. You see that y'all can't see in my corner, can you?
We can now. We see it in little flickers. There you go.
Yeah, you can't see it on the screen. This is that flyway that I believe the mentioned that had been removed. And this is the building. Currently, one of the areas I'm going to talk about a little bit about are these areas right here at the base of the building. And this is a streetscape of the building as it exists today and the proposed change at the bottom, and I'll go into that a little bit further. This is the existing structure as it sits on the site. As you can see, the stairwell to the front of the building extends slightly over the property line. We're proposing to leave the stairs so that wouldn't be an issue. What we're looking for is a way to get into the building to be able to enter at grade. I think as we went over last time, the building has an English basement. So the main floor of the building is up in the air about 6 feet, 7 feet. And so the challenge we've been presented with is trying to get an accessible entrance to the building in addition to some other renovations that need to happen. So our proposal tonight is to enter from the side. The reason that we didn't come to this before is we have a very narrow area between the edge of the building on the west side and the property line is only about 4 feet. So in order to create this, we're having to pull a little storefront back a little bit, give enough circulation space to get to make the entrance accessible. So what you see here is some modifications to the west side of the building with an intermediate floor that'll happen between that English basement and the main floor. They'll change the fabric of the interior of the building, but we're trying to minimize the change to the historic fabric on the exterior of the building. And then this is the existing and proposed basement plan. As you can see, that stairwell at that intermediate landing goes down to access the basement level. And this is the street level once again, or the sidewalk level. And then this is the main floor. And the proposal is to look at reuse of the building for the Knights to be able to lease the building. And we're looking at tenant spaces here. We've looked at worst case scenario, being able to use both the main floor and the third floor of the ballroom add event spaces, but there's some potential for other types of use as well. But the idea is to create an accessible level on each floor. And this is the existing ballroom level and the proposed changes to the ballroom level. On the roof, the only thing that's proposed to be changed is to corral mechanical units on the back of the building. And we're also updating the rear exit stair here. And so here is the existing north elevation and proposed elevation, north elevation. As you can see, this is the existing entry here, and the proposal is to push that entry back to create a landing at the top of the stairs. And I'll go back and so you can see what that looks like in plan. Here you can see this is that existing wall, the existing brick wall where the opening is now. And the idea is to push it back, create a glass enclosure there so it's distinct, that it's new and it's different from the original, to create that landing at the top of the stair. And so that's what that would look like in elevation, just with that elevation. The other proposal that we're going to look at tonight is these two areas here originally had one single window in them as part of the original construction. At some point in the we believe in around 1940, there was some commercial use on the ground floor. They opened these areas up with a lot more glass to give those areas some presence on the street. And we believe it compromised the structure, at least these two flanking towers. So later, these places were filled in and the stucco base was introduced to create that element that you have there now. And what we'd like to do is reopen those original window openings here and then extend the stucco, because the brick has already been modified and this brick does not match this. So the idea is to extend the stucco in these areas and just open back up something similar to the original window. The other proposal is to take all those window openings that haven't been bricked in, but have been infilled with plywood, to open those back up on both the east and the west side. And you can see that here. The other thing that we're adding is the stairwell in the back and this screened enclosure for the mechanical units. In addition, creating a rail that meets current code on the front steps. That's that new exit stair on the rear. And this is the west side, and this is the side that most of the changes will happen. So there are two existing openings here that used to be the entrance to the artisan and craftsman supply. Those are going away, creating a larger entrance there that's pushed back, and then a triple window above that kind of creates a landing, some light at the landing, and then opening up these existing windows. And that's what that looks like in our SketchUp model. And this is the place that. The idea here is to provide a wrought iron railing system that would be something that would be simple and respect the existing structure. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions from the board or staff at this time?
Actually, looking at this perspective on the plan, you have the entrance that kind of secures into the storefront. And it's not here. Am I not reading correctly this?
So there's a little bit of a wall here. This is the what remains of that wall where the original opening is, right here. And then that glass element sticks.
So chamfered wall?
It's not chamfered. I
On
mean,
the
there's
plan
brick
is just-
banding. I'm
I'm
sorry.
trying to understand.
There's some brick banding on the wall right now, and ideally, when the thing is opened up, they can continue the banding on the return there. But the idea is to open that up wider, remove the existing doors, pair of doors that are not even a pair of 3.0 doors right now. Remove those doors and create a larger vestibule back there so that you can have a landing at the top of the stair. Any other questions?
Actually, it's hard to tell from the photographs that you have, and when you can find them, it's great, but we don't have a lot of them on these structures. What did the entrance doors look like on the building in 1907?
We can go back. We do have a picture of that. Oops. This is it. So this is the original opening. What we have now is a new set of doors and a different transom, but it's the existing opening in this wall right now.
We've got some pretty good photos of it, and the transom and the doors are the same, not the same material, but the same big picture of it.
Same big picture, and then they've got the not rusticated, but the brick on each side of it. This original to the 1907 building. Okay,
Right.
And you can also see those openings here as well.
right, on the lower, yeah, on the basement. Okay,
Other questions?
any other questions right now?
No, sir.
Not right now. Okay, good. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak on this agenda item? Ms. Mahar.
Mary Mahard with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society appreciates the applicant restudying this project and appropriately responding to previous board feedback. We are glad to see this project moving along to support new life in the building under the continued ownership of the Knights. When it comes to historic buildings, especially one as prominent as this, we aim to closely adhere to the best preservation practices under the Secretary of the Interior standards. Through this lens, we are generally supportive of restoring the small ground floor windows on the front based on photographic evidence and feel comfortable with the enlargement of the side entry to create an accessible entrance since this area has been previously modified and it will facilitate use of the building. However, we are concerned by the proposal to replace the front recessed entry with a storefront system. This appears to be the original entry configuration, and the brick detailing surrounding the main door is a character-defining feature of the facade. Also, there does not appear to be supporting evidence for introducing a triple ganged window above the west side entry. So while we're excited to see this project progress, both of these proposed changes would result in the loss of significant historic material and alter the character. And therefore, we ask the board to not approve these elements of the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mahar. Other members of the public wishing to be heard on this agenda item? Mr. Schwebler.
Good evening, Justin Schwebler at the Historic Charleston Foundation. Again, we're going to see this application come back before the board to see the revitalization of this important structure on Calhoun Street. We're hesitantly approving of the last application, mostly to kind of increase the equity and accessibility of this building to help the Knights of Columbus suit their mission and continue that in an important corridor in our city. However, we believe that this current application fails to meet that same taste, particularly with the demolition of the historic brick surrounds around the main entrance portal. And so we would recommend denial of just those elements of the application.
Thank you, Mr. Schwebler. Other members of the public wishing to be heard on this agenda item? Seeing none, city staff comments or recommendations?
For general comments and context, as mentioned by the applicant, this was previously submitted and was denied because of the removal of the front stairs in that application. For general comments on the north facade, staff supports the return of the water table windows with jack arch headers, which historic photos show as an original characteristic of the main facade, as long as windows remain the same proportion and location as the historic windows. Additionally, on the north facade, staff also supports the repair and restoration work, the replacement work of the low masonry wall with a new masonry stuccoed wall, and the replacement of the steel hand railings with wrought iron. On the west facade, staff supports the design of the new set of doors and associated awning to facilitate the introduction of the new ADA entrance, the opening of the previously closed windows, and the repair and restoration detail work. On the roof, staff supports the new aluminum mechanical screen as its location is minimally visible from the right of way. Staff conditions for approval. On the north facade, the main entrance has been recessed for safety reasons to provide a landing space at the top of the stairs. Given this is a Category 3 building, staff supports the concession of recessing the entrance location for safety and therefore also supports making a material distinction in the new entrance, in this case, the change to glass, in order to make clear what is historic fabric and what is not. If the entrance wall and doors were to remain at the current location, then staff would want the original brick wall to remain as well. Second condition, staff does not find the change from the existing single window to 3 new windows on the west facade above the new ADA entrance to be necessary and therefore requires the existing single window remain as is. Staff recommendation is conceptual approval with board and staff conditions.
Very good. Any response, Ms. James?
Sure, I'd love to be fine. I'm gonna go back to, if I can. So in response to, everybody's comments about this triple window, I think that my clients would be fine with removing the option to create a triple window here and just leave a single window there. It seems to be aligned well with the element below, so I don't think that that's a problem. Where I want to ask the board's consideration is for the vestibule at the top of the stair. Once again, the existing door and the existing opening are in this plane here. This is the first step. So right now, there's only 10 inches in front of that door to reach and open the door. It's really not a good solution, and it doesn't meet code in any way, shape, or form. That being said, we know that a lot of historic buildings don't meet code, but I think I mentioned in my last presentation when we talked about the removal of the stair. At minimum, there needs to be an entrance that's safe at the top of these steps. So there has to be some modification to this opening in order to create that landing. The opening right now is not wide enough to put 2 3-0 doors in it. It's narrower than that. Those are 2 2-6 doors right now. So in order to create a vestibule there, some of that historic fabric has to be modified. And I think that's all I needed to say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Board discussion. Sure.
Actually, what is the flooring? I don't remember, interior wise.
Right now it's wood.
Wood?
Mhm.
Oh, okay. No problem. I thought if it's some kind of tiles, then it becomes an issue. Okay.
Well, I'll kick it off. On the front elevation, I find it very difficult to support modification to the primary entrance. And I can't support that. I'm great with the 2 windows down below on the north elevation and the removal of the triple hung on the west elevation, but everything else is fine. Everything else is good with me on the south elevation and east elevation. So the triple hung window and the primary door are my only 2 issues. Everything else is, I think, great.
Further board comments.
I'd just like to commend the applicant for your previous attempts at making the building more equitable. I'm sorry that we weren't able to accommodate that. I would be in agreement with city staff in that due to the safety concerns of the original entrance, that those concerns be accommodated. And I agree with the other comments related to the triple hung window and the Calhoun Street windows at the street level.
This is very difficult project. And we have seen this so many times, and what is the solution? And I think the compromise is found here with this application to me. So triple window on the west side, yeah, it's kind of not complementing this building by any means, so. But the front entrance, I think what is presented is what is, should work on the building. If everything is moved out, why to recreate the surrounding with the masonry? So I think solution of storefront is what it's needed, and again, it's a new location. So I agree with staff, is it's working. That's it.
Very good. I don't think I can support the change to the entrance because the photographic evidence would indicate that other than replacement with what appear to be like-kind materials, it's the same entryway, same dimensions, et cetera. I do not have an issue at all with the first floor window replacement with jack arches. That would appear to, as best as possible, replicate the original. And while we normally support change through time, in this case, the change that was made in 1940, according to the applicant, appears to have been one that may have structurally compromised the building. And then that in turn was filled in completely. And so we're nowhere near where we're back to the original product. So I support those ground floor windows. I actually don't have an issue with the new entrance configuration for the west side of the building because the windows are complementary to the new ground entrance space on a facade that, you know, has been or on an elevation that has been closed up for quite some time, certainly opening up those windows. So I would join Mr. Metters in saying I have no issue, not even with the triple window on the western elevation, no problem with the southern elevation, eastern elevation, or the roof improvements or screening or the wall. But I can't agree with changing the configuration of what appears to be the 1907 entrance in its original configuration. If there wasn't strong photographic evidence to support it hasn't changed, it could be a different story, as has happened with so many Charleston facades and entryways.
It was moving that wall with the entrance.
Moving it?
Yeah, because it's new reserves. So it's a new wall altogether.
Yeah, they're moving the wall. That's why the material changes.
I understand. And what I'm saying is, I don't think a compelling case has been made to
move
change the
wall.
existing configuration at all.
Um,
Move the wall.
So, I mean, ask a question again. Just, of course, just logically, I understand what you're saying, right? You go up the stairs and you want to have a landing. I get that, but your safe entry is going to be provided at the side of the building now, right? And that is going to be, it's going to be code, and that's where you can enter the building, ADA accessible, first floor, second floor, third floor, elevator. Okay, that's what I make sure.
So then, this is a silly question. Expand on what you mean by safe entrance.
Code compliant.
Right, not accessible, but
Right, I mean, the top of a stairwell has to have a landing in order to be able to open the door. And by code, the door should swing in the path of exit, right? It should swing out. Right now, I've walked up those steps and opened the door and almost fallen backwards.
You got to maneuver.
It's a tough. They've had people fall. So I think that the issue for that front door is to make a way for them to be able to use it, right? Right now, it's not really technically usable. And so the idea to push the entrance back is to create by code what you should have at the top of a stair to be able to
So-
open the door.
Having shared that in the discussion of moving the entrance back versus the changing of the materiality, if the material were to remain the same but pushed back, would that be acceptable to the board?
So I mean, we're all working this environment, all of the time. If we begin to make our decisions on original features of the building based on meeting code, most buildings that come through here would be asking for changes, and I don't think it's appropriate. I think what you've done, which is great, which is providing that safe entry on the side of the building, is the right thing to do. And if there's cautionary signage or other things that may need to be included to make sure that people know that this is, there's not a landing at the top of the stairs, or whatever you might figure out. I think that's what's appropriate, but modifying original features of the building, I don't think is appropriate.
That's a means of egress. Just a suggestion. That's architect speaking here. If you leave but just the opening and have a door behind, then you create that entrance landing. I don't know if it will be acceptable. And then you have that door which everybody is looking at, but still same opening. Leave the transit.
So we're not here.
I'm not designing here.
We're not here to
That's-
decide, but
Just-
I will also
I'm
concur
trying
that
to-
I think it's something that's worth giving thought to.
It's just this been on and on and on for so long, and it's very difficult solution to be, and I mean, for use, for function of this building.
So, Mr. Chairman, are you looking for a motion?
If we've had good discussion, but yeah, some motion. would be-
And I wasn't trying to end the discussion.
I'm done.
So I would ask if the applicant may be interested in a deferral to look at that other option that's come up. Otherwise, I would make a motion. No, I won't make a motion for deferral.
You're making a motion for
Yeah.
deferral. Okay, is there a second for that motion?
I will second that.
The motion's in proper order. Mr. Brown, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Matters?
Yay.
Ms. Sobchak?
Yay in favor.
Myself, yay in favor. Okay, very good. Agenda item B2. 40 and 46 Market Street. The former Rainbow Market.
Forty to 46 North Market Street is new construction in the old and historic district, and applicant is requesting final approval for a new hotel development. Here's the site in aerial. Context photo, looking east on North Market. Looking west on North Market. And looking south on Raffers Alley. And then we're looking south again. And east on Anson.
Very good. We'll now see the applicant's presentation. Mr. Bello.
Hey, everybody, I'm Eddie Bello with Bello Garrett's Architects. So this project went to the board and received preliminary approval back in December. And when we made that submittal in December, it was actually a very robust submittal. It was basically a final submittal. We had a lot of details, a lot of wall sections. And so the package you have in front of you is basically that same package that we submitted and was approved back in December. What is different is we had a couple of items to address. So rather than, unless you want me to, rather than represent the whole thing, I'm just going to focus on the key issues that you asked us to address. If that's all right with the board. Is that okay?
I think that should be wise use of your time.
Yes, I know. You know I can talk. All right, so really quick, you guys know the site very well. Again, we're keeping just as a refresher, keeping the early 20th century facade that's been altered. We are renovating and restoring the historic buildings, or 3 other historic buildings there. We're on the market, very eclectic, very diverse, actually very non-historic context on either side of the market. Just some other photos of the building. I'm going to fly through the floor plans because really nothing's changed since last time, other than a couple details which I'll touch on. So these are required. So I'll just whiz through them. Obviously, y'all can ask any questions. All right. So one of the items to address last time. So again, our last submittal, we spent a lot of time thinking through the design of the laser screen, how it's detailed, how the connections would work, how the supports would work, position of it. We even went so far as to build a full-scale mock-up and put it on the building, if y'all remember. One of the comments that was made, which was very helpful to us as well, hopefully it was helpful to the board. One of the comments last time was the panel itself could be more opaque. So if you look at what we submitted last time, it's kind of hard to see here, but we had pattern itself had some openings in it that allowed for the framing behind it to be more visible. So what we did, and it's kind of hard, you might have to look at what you have in front of you. What we did is we went back and studied that and made the screen patterns. It's a little easier to see here, more consistent and more less transparent. Still, the goal is for it to be sort of this very provide dappled light, very soft element, not a big wall, but definitely thought that was a good comment to address. Another comment, and I'll get to it later. There was I think there was just some confusion. This is the front North Market courtyard. We have a concrete block wall here. I think there was some confusion by staff about what that was, and I'll just talk about that detail later. But just want to point that out on the plan. The other comment that we heard was to study the color of the panel. So what we had last time, we thought that a lighter gray color would work well. Turns out it's kind of shiny, didn't feel right. So we spent a lot of time since our last meeting thinking about options for the color. And we arrived at this sort of rust brown because we feel like it recedes, feels a little more earthy. It just feels a lot better overall. So those were the 2 sort of major design changes to look at. Just another view. Again, overall, none of this has changed other than the color and a little bit of the panel. Otherwise, there weren't any other comments. So again, these are the same drawings as last time, other than the panel changing slightly. Same views. Again, we spent a lot of time detailing this. And again, how to mark it. This is a little hard to read on the screen, but this is just showing the full panel without the building in front of it. You can kind of see it. All of this was presented last time and approved last time. The details, how it all goes together. Again, a lot of study, a lot of work to get that right. One other comment we had, if you remember, when our client bought this property, something they carried with this property was an agreement with a neighboring property that we incorporate flower boxes, a barn-like door for our garage, and a water feature on the Rafers Alley elevation, subject to BAR approval. So the top elevation we presented last time, staff comments and board agreed was those were not appropriate to the design, so to remove those. So that was the other thing we had to do, so we removed those. So that's what shows on the bottom elevation, which I expect to be a little discussion. No changes to the north elevation. The west, of course, there will be a building in front of this. We do have a couple of new details. This isn't really related to BAR. This due to the flooding that happened right around December 16th, 17th in that area. We have sort of beefed up internally to the historic building some floodproof measures. It's not really y'all's purview. This is the last comment. So this is a little confusing. So this is North Market. This is the adjacent building. This is the historic wall we're keeping. There's a gap of about 2.5 feet right here. And there was some confusion about what this was. This is a concrete block wall that's got stucco on the base. The top of this aligns with the screen. I mean, we have to have something there, but I think it just wasn't clear. So those are the 4 comments we have and that we've addressed. Some other details. Again, this is a trellis that's behind the screen. We had some of this last time. The one sort of extra details we added. So again, Market Street, a good 60 so feet back is this raised portion way back. You will see it, but you got to look for it. We did have some of those details presented last time. Again, this is just what we had last time, nothing different. These are those details at that back wall. These have not changed. These are details through the brick facade and the zinc panels and the dormers. Again, all of this was presented in last time. Same thing. Sections, yeah, these are just required, so we turned it. There's a garden in front of Ginyard Street. None of that's changed. And then the last thing is, and I apologize, I realize this walking to the meeting. The material palette has not changed, except for this is what we had before for our screen, and now it's that darker color. That's probably the shortest presentation I've ever made. So that's it. If you have any questions, we look forward to hopefully moving forward.
Do you have other
Questions?
plans? Do you have other plans?
Tonight? No.
Other questions for the applicant at this time from board members or staff? Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. We'll be back with you shortly. Members of the public wishing to comment on this agenda item. Mr. Tillman.
Hey, how you doing, John? I represent the landowner who has the settlement agreement with this owner. We just had a couple of questions that might be able to be cleared up here. Could you go to bar 07 slide? This slide right here.
That's what plan.
I apologize for not making the December meeting for this.
And Mr. Tillman, I know you're probably familiar with this. Address the question to the board, but I'm going to let Mr. Bello
Okay.
answer them in order just to.
Yeah, I can answer.
Our first question is what this detail is right here, because the garden was a big part of the settlement
Sure.
agreement, but what this detail is right here in the northwest corner of the garden.
Okay. And you give us, you run us through all of them, and then I will
Okay.
trust Mr. Bello to
Second
answer them
one
in
is,
sequence.
I want to make sure that this is a fountain, a water fountain in the garden.
Okay.
The third is that my client is objects to there being a set of stairways in such a prominent area of the garden and would like those moved to somewhere less prominent, either within the garden or without. And then the fourth is a question: is this depicting traffic coming from this proposed Anson Street Hotel underneath the building out to Rayford Alley? Or Rayford's Alley, excuse me. I believe that's all we have.
Okay. And I'll let me do this. Hold on. Did you get those,
I did.
Eddie, those 4 things? Okay, good. Is there any, there's a reason to this. Is there any other member of the public who wishes to speak on this agenda item? If so, raise your hand, just so I know. Seeing none, I'm gonna let Mr. Bello answer those as best he can.
And then will I be able to respond? to
Yes,
city?
of course.
Okay, well, so real quick, they're all pretty. So this, it's just not clear. This is the property line, that's all that is. So there's nothing there. Of course, there's 3 big oak trees we're not touching. This is a fountain. This may not be as accurate as that landscape plan that's in the end. Those stairs, that is an egress stair. And so it's basically just a landing to get outside. We could probably build the dirt up so there's not more than one riser. We have to have a door there, but we can solve that. What's the other? Oh, traffic. Yeah, as this is really a zoning thing, it's not really VAR, but as it's been approved through zoning, everything we presented up a year ago, the cars come in here, they share a path. For this hotel, they park here. For this hotel, they park here, and they've always gone that way. That's, again, that's not VAR, but just so you're clear. Sure. That's not changed since we got it approved as zoning.
And I would say that the traffic flow per se is not within our jurisdiction, but I also know that the applicant through Mr. Bello has been consistent in what they've said about that pattern, even though some details need to be clarified.
Has not changed since.
Okay, good. Any further comment from members of the public? City staff comment. Mr. Tillman, was that satisfactory? Y'all meet after?
We do like the idea of building up around the stairs. If the board is going to approve the rear stairs, we would like the idea of building up around them.
We can easily make that better.
Very good. City staff comments or recommendations?
Staff supports the new, more opaque design of the laser cut aluminum screen, with the color being more compatible with the building color palette. Second, staff wants to understand the detail of the flood panel receptor anchors when panels are not in place. Please describe the means of anchorage and what will remain when the flood panels are not in place. And then finally, and I think Mr. Bello already addressed this, but if you go to, I'm not asking you to do this, Lawrence, but if you go to BAR 44, which is their page number, while visually the line drawing of the flower boxes are removed, it's still full of annotations commenting on it. So I'm just reminding that we need to omit the flower boxes, and if those annotations are in error, then to make sure that those are removed from the drawings.
Excellent catch. And your
And
recommendation?
recommendation is approval with board and staff conditions, with final review by staff of 4 permit drawings.
Mr. Bello, any response?
Yeah, real quick, on the flood panel, as I think Lawrence definitely knows, there are several different ways to design those. The idea is, and we're still working through that, the idea is we would have those receptors that are in the wall, basically little buttons with the covers, not the channels. We're working through a better way where the existing wall is. Behind that is what all of that flood panel, it wouldn't even occur. But that's something we got to go through with staff, and we're on the same page. That's just an oversight by us. That's just a note we had on the drawing. So the idea is they would not be there. There'd be no flower boxes.
And Mr. Bello, you're not bound by this, but I understood from your response to Mr. Tillman that you had no issue ameliorating that condition with that
Yes.
egress staircase.
Yeah, it's a garden, and we don't want, I would rather not have the stairs there either. So if we can solve that to where it looks like part of the garden, that would be better anyway. So
Very good.
good comment.
Thank you. Board discussion and a potential vote on this agenda item.
Yeah, please.
I'll just share that in addition to staff condition number 3, it looks like slides 61 through 65 are all part of the previous submittal that still show the flower boxes and the barn door and the water feature and everything. So, but outside of that, everything.
As long as we're in agreement that that's not in fact eliminated, I think we can,
Yeah.
we're okay with that. Okay, good. I see Mr. Bello nodding along. Further board commentary.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna abstain from voting on this applicant, but I'm gonna make application. I'm gonna make a couple of comments. The project overall, I think it's great. We've talked about that. I can't get over the feeling that the laser screening is experimental on Market Street, and it's just uncomfortable for me. And I like the concept that the front wall, behind the front wall is that outdoor space. I just think that's great. And I realize that's where that wall comes in, but you don't even know, exactly how that's gonna work out, how it's gonna look really, because there's nothing to go look at. And it's just, I don't know. So I'm consistent with my feelings about this since the first time it came through, but the balance of the project, Andy, I want to tell you, I think is, I thought it was great.
Thank you. Further board comments?
Oh, I'm kind of opposite. as well. The new meets old, and screening is actually would be a nice addition to Market Street in my mind. And it's has that playfulness and also it's a solution for, again, old meets new. So I've always been comfortable with this. And the rest of it is, I mean, project at its end. Those boxes and long boxes or whatever, that goes through the final QA. Just checking your drawings, that's about it. I would like to move to the approval.
Very good. I'm not gonna, we can still have further discussion, but there's a motion.
Well,
No, move, I'm sorry, a motion for final approval
final approval is staff,
with
whatever,
board and staff conditions, final review by staff.
yes.
Very good.
And what is that, permit drawings?
Yes, for permanent drawings.
Yep.
Yeah. I will second that motion, but we can still have further discussion if warranted. Mr. Brown.
I wish that we had a sample panel with the new coloring.
I speak.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You will, as part of the mock-up. Typically, colors aren't really finalized until you get to see all the materials together. So we want that to be right too. So you will. So it's okay if, I'd say one more thing.
we
It's
can call
okay
it,
if you
yeah.
approve it because it's still subject to that final.
Mock-up,
or
final
whatever,
approval, yeah.
And to be, so I feel like you're people.
Thank you, Professor.
Sorry.
But that was a good comment, Seton. Further board comment or discussion? If not, the motion is in order. Mr. Brown, how do you vote on the motion?
Yeah, in favor.
Mr. Metters is abstaining, I believe.
Yes.
Ms. Sobchak
Yeah, in favor.
and myself, yeah, in favor. Thank you to the applicant.
Thank you.
Then we'll work on that mock-up thing.
We will. Thank you very much. Y'all have a good night.
Good. Agenda item B3, 155 Meeting Street Site Work Plan.
I am going to have to switch.
Yeah, it was done as two separate files.
Yeah, it's a big file. Yeah.
So separated them into two PDFs. Kept crashing my.
I don't know.
computer,
I'm gonna.
Oh, okay.
I found.
But it was one single file.
Yeah, yeah.
And now it's
Yeah. Is that the top? To the one next to
It
it,
was like.
top left?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Click on that one.
People.
Here? Yep. It's like,
Different ones.
I mean, it's a.
Yeah, well, let's do this. We're gonna have agenda item number 3, but I'm gonna request that, if they're comfortable with it, a representative of the applicant help us before we do anything procedurally that would have the effect of jamming you up on this project. Explain why this same project is bifurcated into a site work project and a construction project. Sure, go on.
Absolutely. That was the first part of our presentation.
Okay.
My name is Nick Musser. I'm a project manager and architect at Morris Adney. We submitted 2 packages tonight because there's a lot to look at. We have the first package, which is landscape and hardscape, primarily, and the second package is architecture.
Okay, let me ask you this. is if we turn you down on one of these two, regardless of the order, is that going to affect the second application? In other words, would you withdraw the second application if the first one failed?
No, I think we'll present both, regardless of the outcome. We've discussed this, whether architecture goes first or landscape. We're fine with the current order, presenting landscape first. And
I trust the applicant to figure that out. What I wanted to know procedurally was, would the voting on one have the effect of, a negative vote on one have the effect of terminating the other?
no,
I'm seeing a lot of not no's. Okay, good. Thank you for that.
But I,
Yeah,
but I may I take that?
Sure.
a step further? So we got BAR 20230011112. That's an application number?
I'll have to defer to staff on that.
Yes.
It's the same application number. And then I think it should be one application. I don't, I don't really understand, separating.
I can elaborate a little bit.
Sure,
on
Mr.
this.
Ramos, sure.
We kind of took cues from Courier Square Phase 2, the Great Star and Liberty projects. And those projects were of a size, and those applicants decided they separated the site from the architecture. And we just felt it was more digestible to split it up. But they are one project. They both happened together. It was more about inviting ample time to look at that.
So Stephen, I just want to ask them, I didn't remember anything with those projects he was referenced, where you have buildings and site work or landscaping as two separate projects. I know it was divided into multiple projects.
We did have one, and I don't know if it's the phase that Mr. Ramos is talking about, but there was in fact one that was site work, for lack of a better term, a lot of hardscaping, sidewalk configurations, et cetera, as I
It was
remember.
fairly recently.
Yeah, and then the balance was the project, but you're also correct with Courier Square. We've had that in so many bite-sized pieces. It's a very modular approach. Okay. So to be clear, if you want to make a motion or object, you can. What I would say is, because staff allowed it as two separate presentations, I'm gonna respect that unless there's a motion to combine them. And allow them to proceed as they've said, with the applicants acknowledging that if one of them failed, it would not really affect the other one, that they're effectively viewing this as standalone.
That's what you're concerned about?
No, I actually like both of them. So but I just the process of having two applications for one project. That's it.
Yeah, and we can discuss that on the procedural side. We'll see how this goes. See how this goes tonight. Okay, with all of that prologue,
appreciate it.
Well.
and that, yeah,
Yeah,
no,
first I have
the
to
city's presentation.
say a few things.
Thank you, Edie, for letting us get that.
That's totally fine. So this is 155 Meeting Street's site work. It's new construction in the old and historic district. And they are requesting preliminary approval for site improvements of new mixed-use development. Here we see the aerial of the site. And existing site photos. These are just taking you around the entire block.
Thank you. Good evening. Again, my name is Nick Muster, project manager and architect at Morse Adamy. And we're here tonight with our team from Hollander Landscape Architects to present the hardscape and landscape portion of 155 Meeting Street. We'd like to request 10 additional minutes if that's possible.
Sure.
And I'll hand it over to Jeff and Steve.
Thank you, board. Thank you, Nick, for the introduction. My name is Jeff McLeod. I'm a senior associate and a project manager at Hollander Design Landscape Architects. I'm here with Stephen Ike, who is a partner. I'm the urban studio director. We're in New York City and Chicago. That's where we're based. And with that said, I will move into things. So today we're just going to quickly tell you a little bit more about ourselves and then take you through our design process and the site plan. And then from there, move on to some renderings and the material palettes. And finally, at the back end of the presentation, we do have working drawings. So those can be referred to, those can be referred to should there be any, more detail-oriented questions. So like Morris Adjmi Architects, we're a very contextual landscape architectural firm. We work in both classical and contemporary modes. So at the left here, you see some of our work in a more classical mode, but still focusing on clean lines and crisp geometries. In the center is some of our contemporary work. I would point you to the bottom center, which is a hotel called the Sagamore Pendry in Baltimore. So we do have large scale hospitality in our background, as well as multifamily residential. And finally, we're showing this Jupiter Island residence because, we're in the Northeast and that's south of here, and you guys are somewhat in the center, and we understand the plants and ecologies from the Northeast through the tropics. I'm not going to speak too long on the context. I know you've seen some drawings and diagrams already. Suffice it to say, we all know that there are some incredible opportunities around the site with the alleys, and there are some incredible blockages around the site, like the days in today, and it's been the design team's ambition since the earliest phases for this project and this site to be a connector in the urban fabric of Charleston. Especially that vital connection between Meeting and King. So in service of that, we've done a lot of work over the last year on the entry drive from Meeting Street. Initially, we had an off-center design to that entry drive, and over time, working with the full design team and the client, we've centralized that entry drive as it grades up, really framing the architecture and providing a more gracious entrance to the site off Meeting Street on both sides. And then on the western side of the site, this is a feature of the project, which we'll go into much more detail on. But the alley is something we're very excited about. I mean, of course, Charleston is known for its alleys, and this is an identity of Charleston we wanted to bring into the project. So over time, the identity of this alley, we want to make both referential to Charleston, but distinct. It's grown into a more curvilinear form. And what that helps us do is two things. First, we can really hook into the adjacent properties and respect their front entries further west, from our site. And then it also helps us do some other things like space making and stormwater retention, which we'll talk about a little more. So that's a bit of the evolution, moving to this site plan that you see here. On the Meeting Street side, you can see how that centralized entry is providing gracious public access into the site, even outside of the arcade you see there. The whole team imagines the public being able to walk through the hotel lounge, through the courtyard in the center and to the western alley, which we think of not as the back of house, but in fact, a really incredible opportunity for this project in Charleston to have a new public space that is equally an entry to the site. Materially speaking, at the Meeting Street side, we're taking the sort of traditional cleft bluestone sidewalks of Charleston, bringing bluestone into the site and through the courtyard, where at the back, we're referring more to the classic Charleston masonry and brickwork that you see, anywhere from the buildings to the site walls to the pavement. And this slide here, we just also want to touch on the Beach & Co. parking lot to the north. There's ongoing discussions about what that site can be, but we want it to be clear that from day one, no matter what that site becomes, our project is already hooking into the existing circulation there. And of course, we hope to be able to extend the sort of larger alley identity up into that site at a later date, as things progress. So that kind of takes us through the plan portion of the presentation. I'm gonna jump into the materials here. I think what I really want to note on this slide is that we think of ourselves as landscape architects as somewhat of a bridge between the public realm materials and the architectural materials. So at upper left, I'm not going to go into much detail because Morris Adjmi Architects is going to do it, but this refined palette that they've designed is obviously a reference point for us. But so are the natural cleft bluestone sidewalks of Charleston, and we want to make sure our palette is respectful of both. So at the bottom here, you can see the bricks both referencing the architecture as well as I stated before, the classic Charleston brick paving as well. And then the right side of the material palette bringing in bluestone, but with a flamed finish to suggest a slightly different feel than the public realm, granite curbs, and then where we have planters using metals that are both classically garden-esque as well as referential to the architectural palette. So this is looking at a render of the front entry that we just saw on plan. And you can see there at the bottom, we're kind of keying you into where those materials I just discussed are happening on the plan. So you have the natural cleft bluestone moving into the more flamed bluestone. The bricks are a sort of cream color that works well with the architectural palette. These are sand mold bricks, so they have a natural variation. Alongside the bricks, we really love the sort of ballast cobbles you see in the streets of Charleston. So we want to add that border detail along the curb line there, which is both an accent as well as it will slow down water as it moves down that sloping drive. And then the curbs are granite curbs. And lastly, the planters you see in this render, it has that verdigris finish that matches the sage colors in the architecture. And we'll show a little more detail on that in just a second. In section, I think what I'd just like to speak to here is that, you know, along with the access on both sides of the drive, we're looking at the plantings along the drive to mediate the scale from the ground plane to the much larger architectural expressions. As we move around the site, at Meeting Street and Horlbeck Alley, most of the materials are the public realm materials and the street tree plantings of the palmettos. But where we do have sort of architectural scope in planters, we want it to have this gray oxidized zinc look and a molding detail that references the architecture directly adjacent. So here you can see a little more of that. At top are those verdigris box planters on the entry drive, referencing the metalwork on the front of the Grand Hotel. Moving down, I'm sorry, at the main hotel. Moving to the second one, the Grand Hotel, that coursing belt, that belt course there, we're taking that and adding that as a trim onto the linear planters that work inside the window fenestration. And finally, at the bottom, the bookends, which are the elevations on Horlbeck, is what we call them. They have a sawtooth masonry detail that we are looking to integrate into the planters. So there's a story between the architecture and the landscape architectural elements throughout the project. Okay, so here we are at the alley. As I stated before, we're excited to tell you guys about this. This is at the Horlbeck entry to the alley. The property line is coincident with the curb line in this render. So everything you see coming out past the building line is, you know, something that the project is giving to the city of Charleston in terms of pedestrian right-of-way. And we're leveraging that to also bring the brick out into the sidewalk space and create a, you know, what we hope is a very inviting gesture that people can see from King Street, maybe even from Meeting Street, where they say, what is that? I'd like to explore that more and feel that this is a space they can access. In addition to that, of course, we're going to have lush plantings right at the entry. We're pulling the plantings out beyond the building line too, also to attract people, with a very large tree that we can uplight. So we're using all of these as sort of beacons from, King and Meeting to draw people in. I'd also just want to mention there's a site wall behind there that we've spent some time with the design team developing, and we're going to show you a little more detail on that as well. And finally, just a note, as you can see clearly, the bricks are directional, which we think is also a playful touch. And again, giving this alley its own particular identity, even as it's referencing the larger sort of suite of alleys within Charleston. So this slide gives you a little more detail on that entry sequence. At top, you can see the brick pavers curving out, terminating with a sort of medallion in the paving, which is a detail we've noticed around Charleston that we really like. We don't know what that name will be yet or what that text will be yet, but we certainly want to give this space a name, and hopefully it grows into a space that, people know referentially in Charleston. In terms of the site wall, the detailing here is meant to, like the project elements kind of throughout the project, reference both the history and a contemporary feel. So we're doing a Pierce brick detail on the main part of the site masonry wall, but then adding in that sawtooth and keeping it very clean as an overall design gesture. At the bottom of the slide, the elevation, I think just the important thing to note is that we're really playing with the scales of the adjacent properties and trying to make sure that we're integrated well with them, with our site wall. This is moving a little further into the western alley. And what I'd just like to note here is that, all of these plantings, they're going to do a lot of things for us, but one of the big things is mediate the scale from the adjacent architecture to the 155 Meeting Hotel building, and create a comfortable pedestrian feel throughout this space. And in section, you can just see that a little more measured with the branching kind of starting at 8 feet or so, and the trees rising up to 14 or 16 feet. And this is our last rendering that we'll show you in this site design package. This planting right here is kind of this central island here. And it's really meant to celebrate this place where the hardscape opens up. We plan to have benches around this. We plan for this to be a space that's almost a park, a pocket park for the city of Charleston. And we want to then accent that with a really beautiful sculptural tree, something that has an identity for every season of the year. In the spring, it's flowering. In the summer, it's just got its beautiful leafed out form. In the winter, it has a beautiful branching pattern. And that will really play into a larger tree planting identity throughout the alley, where we're alternating between a type of kind of showy flowering tree like that and evergreen magnolias, so, and a few palms here and there, so that we're really starting to build a rhythm. And you can imagine in the springtime, down the alley, 6 of these trees just carrying you along. And so with that, I want to move to the last slide. And this slide right here is showing you with the smaller tree where the center island is. But the thing I'd like to note on this slide is just that the Fulton Lane Inn, we are keeping their existing trees. We're working their gardens into this space just as a general acknowledgement of the contextual nature of this design and how seriously we take it. And so that brings us to the working drawings, which I won't belabor that and go through every one. I think we can open up the floor to public comments if people are ready for that.
That's pretty thorough. Yeah. Okay. With that, we will move to public comment. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak on this application? Yes, sir. If you'll approach the microphone. And a friendly reminder, this is on the the presentation that is in front of us, which is basically a site work and landscape progress.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much. My name is James Ward. I come here not only as a landscape architect who's been working at Charleston Place since 1980 in the original development of that design and seen all the mistakes that we've made and hope not to repeat them to some extent. And also some general conceptual things, having worked at the college and pedestrian access there for quite some time. And then most recently, as a member of Circular Church, I have to say that we're really excited about this project and conceptually just how appropriate it is, not only in terms of the alleyways, but opening it up and creating a lot of activities on a street level. Fantastic. It's a great opportunity. Nothing I say should, I hope, become clouded with the details and seem to take away from that. And so things that are problematic, if I can try to get to this succinctly, is that there is a tendency here, I think, for the landscape to try to emulate to some extent the building rather than a Charleston vernacular, if I can put it that way. And I'll point to a couple of details. First of all, the brick walls that are done in imitation of the building rather than as a standard pierced brick wall Charleston style with the sloped brick top and that sort of thing. To me, trying to hold on to those details of Charleston is an important way that we can bring Charleston into this project. It's not just a question of taking the building and putting it out in the street. So as a conceptual thought, I put that out there for consideration. Also, when we think about the walk, and I know it is supposed to be, how shall I say, whimsical, I guess is the word, to have it the curvilinear fashion and so forth. I'm reminded of all the discussions we had when we were trying to put together a plan for the College of Charleston's landscape, and that we're trying to combine curved forms and straight lines and the kind of building material that read well with time. And we ended up using a combination of straight lines with curved forms, but the blocks themselves become a lot more simple. The sense of the bricks wandering through there just, like I say, I've thought about a lot, just comes across as kind of the drunken sailor walk. You know, it just kind of wanders through there, and I know it's supposed to be whimsical, but that's my sense of it for what it's worth. I also worry a little bit about that much brick there on the sidewalk, particularly within the vehicular areas, in that, you know, we have a lot of experience with brick at the College of Charleston and some of the issues there that really need to be addressed in a proactive fashion. I wish we had the opportunity to put the barriers down, keep the roots from upheaving the problem, creating problems and so forth. But then also in vehicular areas, as we know from Charleston Place, to put in a standard brick with the standard configuration on the sides without nibs, without some consideration to the settlement and the traffic that goes there, creates a fiasco over time. And so I asked for some special detail consideration related to how that actually works. So this is kind of, I hope, being helpful in terms of thinking about it in terms of what we already know about Charleston streetscape work. I noticed that it seemed to me that the granite curve actually had a smooth top, and that's something that we don't do. We have a chamfered or, you know, articulated top, not a smooth top. Not that that's a bad idea, it's just not what we do. And that's another example of trying to maintain a streetscape, a level approach that ties these areas together. When we did Charleston Place, we did streetscape for the entire several block area, and that got extended, and that helps to tie the thing together and make it work. We're not trying to create something entirely different, even on the details on this site. So that's just a thought going forward. This is not zoning, so we can't really talk about, you know, sort of the amount of traffic and that sort of thing. And I wish that some of that could be more public, because I kind of lack confidence that given the amount of uses that are being proposed for Horlbeck Alley, that it's not going to get overwhelmed. I just have to say that because my conscience requires it, but I know that's not your purview. But I really wish that some of that information were more public. It would certainly make me feel better from the standpoint of the church. Just because, you know, getting out of church sometimes is really hard, and we're adding a lot to that situation. And so, you know, trying to keep that from getting out of hand is important for the city. So I'll put it on the table. In terms of the alleyway too, just thinking about the issues that we face in our courtyards at the church, which is right there, given the soil types and the drainage and so forth, it's very easy for those areas to get overburdened with drainage water and become unsuitable mediums for growing. The tall building, which has been acknowledged but not really depicted on these sketches, the building and configuration of the pedestrian and proximity to the pedestrian space in between. I think if you could just see the whole section, you would say, geez, you know, the scale is a little bit off. And if we are counting on the plants, which are shown here, to really do the job, I'm not sure we can deal with it just in this valier. We need some kind of landscape structure, think green wall, that might work in that context to provide something with more assurance that it will give the scale there. In any case, doing sunlight studies and looking at soil growing conditions is going to save a lot of wear and tear long term on this project to try to get it to actually work. And those maybe are technical things, but right now, the way it stands, I don't have a lot of confidence that that's going to work, even with the detailing that's shown. Perhaps I can be shown more. So trying to make this more Charleston-like in its site work, a little less spectacularly different. I plot it in concept, and some of these details related to the manageability of this site, I have some real issues with. I hope that's clear enough.
And is it, I know you've been a frequent flyer over the years I've been here. Is it Mr. or Dr. Ward?
No, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a stupid landscape architect. I'm doing the best I can with what I have.
We always
I just
appreciate your
spent 5 years
comments.
teaching. That doesn't make me a doctor.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, and duly noted. And I would add as a follow-up, Mr. Ward, you're probably familiar that a lot of the concerns you have about material compatibility are either part of a final mock-up, et cetera, but they're well noted. Yep.
You know, because frequently they get overlooked. Thank you.
Yep. Further public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, city staff comments, recommendations.
Sure. Staff comments are going to focus primarily on hardscape. That being said, staff appreciates the flowering tree as a visual terminus at the intersection between the formal east-west hardscape path and the organic north-south back alley path. Staff would recommend a tree choice that would have a year-round presence so that it is treated as a sculptural object or replacement of special tree with sculpture or public art. Staff supports the material palette as shown and the contrast between the more formal design of the front of house hardscape areas with cool colors and the organic back alley design with warm colors. We appreciate the details of the planter boxes referencing the metalwork on the facade, as well as those referencing various coursing details on the building. And we support the applicant's continued work with the adjacent property owners to continue the back alley path beyond the immediate property up to Market Street. Staff has no conditions for approval of the site work, and our recommendation is preliminary approval with conditions.
Okay, thank you, Vivian. Any response to the applicant at this time?
Sure. Just a brief response. First, thank you for your comments. As a landscape architect, I live in fear of things not working right as well. So, you know, at our firm at Hollander, we take that extremely seriously. So that's all the labor and research with making sure that the slab and the mortar setting bed and the bricks are ASTM rated for the level of traffic at the drive, and all of those details are buttoned up. And as you said, that comes at a later level of review, but we plan to provide all of that documentation. And the same goes for soils and plants and all of that, but all of your comments are taken to heart and something that we want to make sure that we incorporate. And then, you know, as in the more general sense with the idea of historic Charleston and the contemporary, I think, you know, that is a stance that we take. We really respect this city. It's one of the most beautiful cities I've ever been to. But we also want to show something that is representative of the contemporary as well. And so we're trying to bring those together in this design with the architecture. And, you know, we just hope that we're going to do, you know, that it's going to turn out as well as we think it is, and that it's shaping up. But that's our ambition.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Board discussion and a vote on this agenda item.
Jay is not here. I seem to be speaking first.
That's okay.
So thank you for your work. Thought your presentation was great. I think the materials are really fine. The thought and detail appeared to be also, well thought out, and the way they integrate with each other works well as I see it. The contextual buildings and alleys that you showed, and I looked at both in this application and the next one. Many times people use contextual photographs. It's kind of like, wow, I don't understand how your project is relating to these. I think yours relate to them perfectly. So please look at the soil that you're building on top of. And even though it may not appear that something may need to be piled, that you're gonna put a surface on that's either driven on or even walked on, and make the determination whether or not it really needs to be supported at 50 feet of depth or whatever it is, or tied in some way. And then also think about, as you're meeting with other folks in the city and other partners, just because the water runs off of your property, it's still going out into areas that it has to get into piping that's old. And please be thoughtful of that. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Metters. Other comments?
First off, it's always great hearing from the public, especially someone like Professor Ward, who's done so much in the city over the years, and I think can represent the perspective of a lot of the public, even though they may not be here to necessarily say it or to be as well informed as someone who has a specialty in that area. Like myself, I really appreciate that sort of context. And most notably from what he shared for me is understanding the site work in the context of the project overall, and really getting an understanding and feeling of what it would be like going through these alleyways and thoroughfares for the public. I think in concept, it's a beautiful project, and that's one thing, whether it be the site work or the architecture that'll be presented in the next section or the next application, or I guess the same application, whatever we're doing. It's always been great. But are we voting? Are we voting on this, or are we voting it all together?
We are. That's the applicant's choice. The staff accepted it as two separate applications. That's why I had the prologue about the ramifications of that, if one piece gets approved or disapproved, and how it might affect an approval on the next. But the applicant seemed very confident in reconciling that, so that's okay. I understand if you believe as a board member that you cannot make an informed vote by being able to compare one half of the project, or not one half the project, the complementary part of the project to what is being compared here. I personally am, but I can certainly understand if somebody was not. Seeing as we've been provided with both application packages, even though we're receiving the presentation tonight.
Would there, through Robert's rules or by means of the authority of the chair, to be able to table this until the next application has been reviewed?
We can, and we can also change the order of agenda items and put it procedurally back on the agenda, but you would need to make you would need to make a motion to table to make it clear that you're tabling it only until the next presentation as opposed to our next regular meeting.
What I will withhold that until all members of the board have been able to.
Very good. But does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, good. so often when we get an application, we spend about 3/4 of that application on the building and maybe 10 minutes on landscape architecture. And I do feel that the applicant has made as good faith effort as I have ever seen to show a very thoughtful site work plan. And I also appreciate, as we've talked about and struggled with this project since day one, that this, despite it being a very large site and a large building, it is a difficult site to work together, and you're trying to integrate 2 streets and an alleyway together that have some very hard conditions and constraints on what you can do with them. And so with all that said, I approve of all of this application and support it for preliminary approval but because we're at a preliminary level, I would encourage the applicant to look at the issues we've talked about with materials and constructability and wear, because that's all well advised. And on 2 particular things that I would not have thought out, but Mr. Ward pointing them out and then looking at them in the material palette, seeing that would just be considering, not requiring, but considering restudy of the granite curbing and finish on it. And the same for the treatments on the punch through walls, not as a condition, but as just a restudy to see if something more iterative comes out of doing that. Other than that, I'm fine with directional brick. Yes, it's different, but it's a very pretty project. I hope it holds up under regular use. I appreciate the consideration of drainage, which technically is outside of our purview, but we all know it's an issue. And I'm comfortable with the applicant's plant materials in particular. And what I would say is, just for the benefit of everybody, and we've talked about as a board for a while, green walls have been a real problem in Charleston. The track record of those that are successful versus the ones, well, they've mostly been unsuccessful. We encourage people finding ways to make them work, but our weather conditions are such that it's tough. So I can live with the palette as presented and the plant materials as presented by the applicant, especially at a preliminary stage. But I would say it's important at final, especially with presentations of materials, to make sure that it's going to be hardy enough to hold up to Charleston weather. Further board comments?
Okay, I'm left here. First of all, I don't think the landscape design will affect the building design that much. If we approve or disapprove this one, because we know where the building is, and so I don't have a problem to subdivide this application. Secondly, I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but Mr. Ward had a lot of good points, and for me as a designer, I'm looking at the alley and looking at the Charleston, and I understand that your design of the alley paving curvilinear, it's, I guess you say that's a more contemporary, but doesn't need to be. And the Charleston alley is really, straightforward and inviting as well. So that's, I'm just not comfortable with this curvilinear design altogether for Charleston. And plant material, I agree with staff, but I also want to add the ground covers also need to be evergreen. The hydrangeas will die in the winter and will all the sticks, and it's not going to be pleasant to walk by. But paving material hardscape is all the materials we use in Charleston, and combination of them we use in Charleston, so it's all fine. And the rest of it is technical and constructability. That's kind of it.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm done.
Thank you, Ms. Socha. Further board comments or a motion on this agenda item?
Yeah, I'd like to motion to table agenda item 3 to the end of the current agenda for consideration.
Okay, that's properly made motion. Is there a second to Mr. Brown's motion?
I'll second.
Okay, it's in proper order. Ms. Sopcich, how do you vote?
No,
Mr. Fetters?
Yeah.
Mr. Brown?
Being in favor.
And myself getting in favor. We will table this, be reconsidered, presumably with all discussion having taken place after the next presentation. And I'll ask this again, because I don't think, and Mr. Ramos can speak for the applicant, I don't think there's any gaming of the system. Was one of the main reasons for bifurcating this just the time consideration?
It was a big component and also just how much emphasis we've given to the site and that it almost demanded its own,
Got it.
but it was a lot of time focused, yes.
Okay. We are tabled on agenda item number 3 until presumably later in the meeting. That moves us to agenda item B4, the architecture and hotel component of 155 Maple.
We're still at 155 Meeting Street, but now focused on the hotel component. Still new construction in the old and historic district, and they are requesting preliminary approval of the new mixed-use development, hotel, residences, restaurant, and retail. Lawrence, you can go ahead and take us through the site since it would be the same set of photos.
Thank you for the time tonight. There's some physical models that I want to share with you all that actually paint a good picture of the refinements that they're making. So.
The members of the public who want to come up and look or get close to the models can do so if y'all want to approach.
is that Macapam?
Not
Yeah.
models, excuse me.
No, it is Macapam.
Well, they are in part.
Yeah,
The photos in the presentation turned out, photos of the model look really good.
they're great.
Yeah.
I was really pretty happy about that. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you. Again, my name is Nick Musser. I'm a project manager and architect at Morris County with Rosanna, presenting 155 Meeting Street, the architecture portion. Again, we would ask for 10 additional minutes if that's possible.
That's fine.
Thank you very much. So tonight, we're presenting the architecture portion. And this is for preliminary review with a focus on refining the architecture, continuing to improve upon the character and kind of quality we presented in the past. This presentation also touches on the 4 primary conditions that the board or staff kind of commented on at the conceptual review. I'm not going to read all of this right now, but we touch on this in later renderings. The first point is a question about the barrel vault at the bridge. Second point is a question about the connection on the western alley to Market Street, which Jeff has also talked about. Comment 3 is regarding the detailing at the guardrail roof. And then comment 4 is a question about the balconies on the south elevation of the wall deck. Again, we'll go through that through later images. We just wanted to recap quickly for the board and the public regarding the kind of building massings that we've developed. We name each of these massings just to make it a little bit easier to orient yourself. So we have the Gatehouse, which is the small building next to Meeting Street Inn, with the Grand Hotel, the residential hotel, and then on top, the conservatory, which is actually not labeled here. Jeff spoke about the public space and the public realm that we've created with this project. A little bit more sidewalk width on Meeting Street. We've added the 10-foot sidewalk on Coral Deck, and then really that kind of wonderful western alley that we presented previously. Really stitching this part of the neighborhood back together across the site, where you currently can connect to King Street from Meeting Street through the site, which is depicted in this section. Meeting Street on the right side shows really the kind of nuance and activity that we're bringing to this portion of the site, allowing the pedestrians and public to access through the entry drive, through the sidewalks, through the hotel lounge, through the site into the western alley and King Street beyond. So we're super excited about those opportunities through landscape and architecture that we've presented. I'm going to pass this off to Donna now to present the renderings.
Thank you, Nick. Good evening. So tonight we would like to share some design, the proposed design revision that we did after taking in consideration your comments from the previous conceptual BAR. Comments that actually helped us today to deliver and to propose an architecture that we think is more mature and then detailed that are more refined. So we would like to start from the view at Meeting Street. The image to the left is the previous design for conceptual BAR, and the images to the right is our current proposed design. This view does not present any major design change, it's only fine tuning and refinement, and we believe that we're still deliver an high quality architecture. And specifically, the fine tuning of the design happens on the Grand Hotel facade. The Juliet balcony were removed at the 4th floor and they were added at the 2nd floor, consequently increasing the height of the glass. So creating a sort of piano nobile and also creating a sort of hierarchy articulation of the building facade from bottom to top. The second images analyze the view of our project standing at the corner of Meeting Street and Orbeck. The main design revision happened at the residential hotel, the 2 bookends of the building. We took in consideration your concern of the 7th floor cantilever balcony at the above in the setback above the bookends. Our proposed design today is to eliminate those cantilever balcony to create a compositionally cleaner architecture and less busy. Another fine tune that we believe improve the facade of the bookends, adding animation articulation to the bookends facade is that the grid of the single punch opening has been replaced by larger opening that follow a rhythm of ABA. Exactly, creating a more articulation facade, and Nick will explain in the elevation later on, and he will go more into the detail. Another fine tune regards the Grand Hotel. We replaced the 3 single canopy with 1 continuous canopy. This is not only to accentuate the tripartite reading of the facade, but also to create a more interesting articulation on the human scale pedestrian level, in addition of the planters and canvas that already are present in our project. Here we are standing on Orbeck Alley, looking the bridge. We heard your concern about the barrel vault soffit that in relationship with the storefront below and the misalignments with the vertical piers. So our proposed design is to have kind of a contemporary yet Charleston style coffer ceiling whose elements start to align and were related to the storefront. And also, as you can notice, we gave some breathing room between the header of the storefront and the bridge soffit. The grid of the coffer ceiling continue the facade of the bridge. And then the facade of the bridge, as you notice, has one more layer of articulation because we added divided light at the windows, giving a more sense of residential and kind of smaller scale, more intimate scale to the facade of the bridge. And here, the West Alley. We think West Alley is so important since the day number 1 for the urban design concept for the entire project. The under team explain how much work and coordination we put on this on the West Alley. In terms of revision in design, the design is largely unchanged in terms of architecture. However, I hope you can appreciate our continued research of improving the details of each element.
you can see the metal work is start to become more real because we are studying constructability of each element. The sawtooth brick detail as well start to be much more defined, and so the brick detail around the windows. Also, one note about the fountains. The fountains is a kind of in access, perfect access on Fulton Alley. So is becoming a funding element from King Street. They drive people in because there is a focal point from the access. And we are currently studying the design of the fountains. Tomorrow, actually, we are planning to go out. We have a visit to the American College of the Building Art because we are studying, we are collaborating with them potentially to design and build the fountains to reflect the Charleston mood. And then similar consideration we can do on this view at the entry of the West Alley. We can see how much emphasis we are trying to take on the human scale, pedestrian scale. One of the comments from the previous BAR was to perhaps highlight the entry of the alley from King Street. So that's why we thought about, instead of putting like a physical signage or physical gate, to having the landscape be the finding elements to enter the alley. And here we are in the West Alley, a little bit more inboard, and this view architecturally can start to really highlight how important are the details also in our facade. They create depth, shadow, articulation, and this is one more way for us to celebrate the pedestrian, because you are on baseline, you can see, you can touch, you can perceive those details. Capturing the essence of Charleston is constantly our design ethos for the architecture that we do in Charleston, and this is kind of a little synoptic image of what we think. And in this slide, we include some of the current projects that we have in Charleston. Our design aims to serve as a modern interpretation of Charleston historic architecture, and we really believe that the eternal beauty, timeless beauty of Charleston really can suggest a contemporary architecture that still speaks to our day. And in terms of the materiality, we developed a good understanding of the limestone when we designed and built the 334 King Street, where we really love to sculpture the limestone, making those scallops. And as you know, the facade in precast concrete of 529 King Street is HAP, and so we are learning and we are developing an understanding of the precast. And 332 King Street is a historic revisitation that we also have lots of care to study over time. This is kind of a close-up for the 529 King Street, where we really develop an understanding of the precast that we are using still with this kind of organic shape that's we have also the Grand Hotel capital columns and the cornice. And then we also wanted to mention also the metal, decorative metal detail that we are developing in the courtyard of 529 King Street. We have been working really hand to hand to a local artisan via end sketches and floor sketches that will serve to create a decorative metal mock-up, because exactly for us, the quality and those artisanal materials are very important. This is the material palette that we propose for 155 Meeting Street. The material palette would like to be light, amiable, sophisticated, at the same time warm, welcoming, that work together as an ensemble in general. And we play with natural limestone, precast, brick,
and accents that we can show in a moment. So this is like a close-up for our brand hotel. As mentioned, we are using kind of a natural limestone at the base, and then we transition to precast concrete so that we can develop those organic shape for the capital and the organic cornice as well. Also, always accent of copper and other natural material. Gatehouse, it will be like the natural stone with the accent of precast around the windows, also to create those kind of more organic shape. The natural stone is proposed with a gentle amber finish to make it a little bit more distinct in the building. Decorative metal work characterize our residential hotel facade, arches, and then the metal guardrail. We are working to make them constructible, and they have this kind of sage green saddle palette with off gray brick that serve as a background. Accent of lights, natural wood and terracotta for the balcony continue to create this warm feeling. And I leave it to Nick that will continue the presentation and the description of the details.
Thank you, Rosanna. The next chapter is looking at the existing, or the proposed elevations versus the previous design, looking at some of the past sketches as well. As Rosanna mentioned with the renderings, minimal changes and just refining of the architecture at the Grand Hotel. We have the Juliet guardrails at the second level, and then the single large awning at the entry. As you move east, looking at the ornamental metalwork, we previously had an additional bay of metalwork that's been reduced here, and so that piece is centered on the lounge entry to focus that effort, and just looking at an updated rendering of that elevation. And I'm just going to move through a lot of this pretty quickly and we can talk. These are some sketches, some process sketches of the Horrell deck elevation that we've refined, as well as the western alley. On Horrell deck, we previously had single punched openings at these bookends. We've refined that and really in collaboration with the interior designer, developing and optimizing with the hotel keys and condos. We've introduced these larger punched openings at the upper levels. They have Juliet guardrails just to animate these facades a little bit more. And then one of the other key changes here is that we previously had parking at level 1.5, 2, and 3. We've eliminated the parking at level 3, and those openings are now glazed to just improve that facade on Horrell deck. And then I think it was board comment 4. We previously had the cantilevered balconies, and those have been removed. Here's the updated rendering of the Horrell deck elevation for reference. You can see the bridge here as well, without the barrel vault. Moving to the western alley, similar to Horrell deck, we have continued to collaborate with the interior design team. The balconies, the width of the balconies has been reduced to work better with the interior planning. And we've also introduced the larger openings with the Juliets. That is really the primary change on the western alley. And then updated rendering of that elevation. Moving to the north elevation, this portion is largely unchanged. We had some glazed openings with.
Nick, could you go back one slide?
Yeah.
So the windows on the second and third floor, there's 6 of them, yeah.
These guys. Yeah, there's a shear wall there. So we have this language of these kind of blind openings. They're still brick and relief, but they're not glazed. Yeah, and that's similar to the north elevation as well. We previously had some glazed openings here. Most of these were back painted or spandrel, and so they were fake openings, and we've decided to infill with brick with the same relief and depth and shadow, but that's kind of the view from the parking lot. Most of this elevation you can see ghosted in here is obscured by or blocked by the Meeting Street Inn, but that is the north elevation. And then this chapter moves into the material kind of details, expanding on some of these facades. It's just easier to look at with the models. For the gatehouse, for example, as Rosanna described, it's a precast hybrid with natural stone. So the face of the pilaster is natural stone. And then we use the precast to really celebrate the material. What we can do is sculpting that material to create these kind of rounded head, jam, and sill conditions. And really have continued to develop these facades and the depth of these facades is really important to MA to set the windows back, create a lot of shadow and depth. Again, at the Grand Hotel with these kind of deep belt courses and using that precast on the upper portions to sculpt the pilasters and really kind of celebrate that kind of plasticity. The next one is Resi Hotel, which we've looked at the kind of, as Rosanna described, the metalwork has evolved, it's become more mature. We're working with fabricators to really figure out how to kind of roll the steel and make this really special. Moving to the Horlbeck elevation, we've got this model showing that kind of introduction of the wider openings with the Juliettes. And then the sawtooth detailing. The image at the top left is showing this kind of stacked sawtooth detail to really kind of celebrate those cornices throughout the project. We have the bridge facade, which relates to the coffered ceilings in this area and in the depth and the profile that we're achieving there. We have the updated conservatory, which is minimally updated. We've added a gutter essentially around the bullnose to protect guests. But other than that, that is largely unchanged. We have this detail, kind of the top right image, is just expanding on the guardrail detail. It's a question from staff conditions previously, showing the layering with those elements. So this is really the bulk of the presentation. There are secondary elevations that follow and floor plans, but those are largely unchanged. I just wanted to kind of pause here if you guys want to look at the models or ask questions.
I have a couple. Is there a rendering of the north elevation
There is not.
in particular reason?
We can go back to that elevation.
And is it, are you contemplating that maybe something extends from that building out this way at some time or out to the north?
I mean, that would be a phase 2 consideration, but it's, the windows here are really responding to the program in this area, less about the adjacencies.
No complaints. I was just wondering because
Yeah.
that's the only elevation I didn't see.
Yeah, it's really just a primary response to program.
Nick, can you just highlight where the Meeting Street Inn is located?
Yeah, it's kind of ghosted in the dash line, so it's most of that elevation.
Yeah.
The change to Horlbeck Alley side, from the repetition of the windows to the addition of the balconies was due to work with your interior designer for programming?
Yeah, it's continued collaboration with them. We felt like those larger openings were better suited at those locations of those living rooms versus the single punched openings that were just kind of narrow and didn't allow as much light in.
It would also allow us to get some more kind of usable Juliet balcony that are meaningful, because before we have one single punch opening. And also we told community that kind of animate the facade a little bit more, create a little bit more hierarchy, and the rendering show that the resolution was better instead of having this very severe marching along single punch opening, having a little bit more articulation on this facade.
And if you go to see the page 13 or 14, I'm not sure which.
You mean their page 13 or 14 or slide deck?
The one I was looking on in my office, I'm not sure which one that would be.
Is they have their
Yeah,
numbers
that's it.
within.
That's it, right? That's perfect right there. I'm gonna, actually, if you go to the the one after that, yeah. So how does that inside corner brick and by the way, I think the coffered ceiling there's awesome. I think that looks really good, but how does that inside corner engage? Literally, I tried to look at it on the construction documents.
This portion?
Yeah,
So
because there's actually looks like a little shadow line.
there is, there's a reveal between the precast. You can kind of see here, the belt course is deep at this portion. We've basically returned that to flat with the stone, but there's still 6 inches between sort of the face of the stone and the precast. So then there's that reveal rising onto it.
So there's actually a little space
Yeah.
that holds that.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's nice. That's a nice detail.
Yeah, we didn't want to be this an afterthought.
So really, we spend some time to understand how those capitals can dive into the bridge.
Another quick question actually on this slide, and I go up one to slide 12. The differential between the left-hand side, the upper part above the awning on the left is glass, on the right has been removed. Is that the same down the rest of the alley?
It is a little bit of a hodgepodge. Some of it is related to mechanical. So let me go to. Do you have any other questions here? I was gonna flip to the elevations just to.
Go ahead.
I just want to make sure I'm not misrepresenting this. So I think it's too hard to see. There are opportunities for some glazing in here. And I think we were debating mechanical here, but that is not.
Yeah, the program has not been fully finalized, so we want to show that that portion is glass, or if it becomes obscure, then we can still have some interesting in details and perhaps using this kind of
Yeah,
the same method.
Where we have a mechanical deliveries or intake for the garage,
Yeah.
we add that ornamental layer. But that specific location, actually, I think that should be glass.
Is that only one bay or
Sorry.
is that only one,
So
that bay? or
the
all of it?
ornamental metal on the louvers should be at parking. And where we have back of house space, this portion should be glass.
All of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was an error.
So on your perspective, I think we're showing the metal work, is it?
Yeah, I think that's an error.
He's saying that's an error.
Yeah, so the Grand Hotel is all glass above the awnings. The second portion of the Resi Hotel is all glass. And the third portion down Horlbeck should all be
It should have,
enclosed.
yeah, it should have that ornamental metalwork on top of the louvers.
The transition between the materials of, limestone and precast, is the reason cost or why we're using all of, because they will weather differently,
Yeah, I think it is, we have this interest in a darker base. That's just kind of the first and foremost. We like the stone in these piers. I think similar to, I'm gonna forget the address, but some of the other commercial buildings in the city, you have a granite base and then stucco above. There's something out there. But the precast decision was really primarily for the opportunity to sculpt these elements. And
Okay,
create
I
these
probably
materials.
misunderstood because I saw second level also limestone.
Precast starts here.
Okay,
All of the white is precast.
okay.
So I think it's page 15. March. And this is just interest actually. Well, maybe 14 or maybe 16. Yeah, right there. So I looked at it on the construction drawings, but that's kind of a cool deal because those trusses inside don't actually look like they come together. It looks like there's a gap in between them. Like it's neat looking.
I think it's a little bit loose here. There should be some kind of fin, I think, but. Or maybe not.
Because I was thinking that's very interesting structurally.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, these things are self-supporting, right? They're not,
Yeah,
it's
right,
supporting the building.
Right,
but
right.
It is very playful.
But it looks pretty neat.
Other board comments or questions at this time?
I think the bridge is worked out well. And what is, to me, what is good, the caissons on the ceiling, they continue vertically. It reminds me, there's a little connector building on the Broad Street across from the post office.
Yep, that's next to the
Yeah,
federal courthouse annex.
Yeah, so it's really nice connector multiplied.
See,
But-
Mr. Ramos wanting to be acknowledged. Yes, sir.
unless I fell asleep, I don't think we've had city architect comment.
No, we haven't, and we're not out of that.
Okay.
We have questions and board comments, and we have not had public comment yet, nor have we had city staff comments, but you're on your toes. I'm glad to know. Our auxiliary board members, making sure we're not getting in trouble.
Wow.
Any other board questions or comments at this particular time? Hearing none. Thank you to the applicant for the second. We'll have you back up here in a minute. Is there any member of the public who wishes to be heard on this agenda item? Mr. Ward.
Make it brief. Since they brought it up on this one, and since I didn't mention it before, the connection in that rear alleyway going over to the south is stated with an arrow, but I don't see where that connection is. I think it's an important one. I'd like to see it developed, but that's, I think, important to the value of that alleyway and making that internal connection, especially with the SE&G building park being planned in that general area. So I would just point that out as, it's not an omission, it's just something we need to figure out. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Ward. Any other member of the public wish to be heard on this agenda item? Seeing none, staff comments or recommendations?
General comments, applicant has responded to the previous comments related to the design of the bridge element, and staff supports the design changes related to the bridge with the removal of the barrel vault and the lining up of vertical and horizontal members between the bridge and the building. We are also supportive of applicant's removal of select balconies and addition of others in order to support the hierarchy of the facade. Staff conditions for approval. While the bridge connection, and actually you may want to put this on number 14, which is also 82 on the slide deck. While the bridge connection to both buildings is much improved, the belt courses coming off the Grand Hotel at the corner towards the bridge on the second floor is prominently expressed dying into the bridge and creates an uncomfortable condition between the bridge and the plasticity of the intermediate cornice at that moment. Right, so I'm not talking about the first one where it flattens, but the next one where it doesn't. We would recommend flattening that detail like you do on the first floor after the course turns the corner and meets the bridge as a condition, because we like that detail and how the plasticity becomes flat. And we think that should continue up and not just be on the first floor. Staff recommends preliminary approval with board and staff conditions.
Very good. Any response from the applicant?
Agree.
Good.
I didn't quite understand, I'm sorry, your connection to the south, I didn't quite understand.
Well, you have an arrow in one of your first slides, which shows the alleyway connecting to something over there beyond Coralbeck, huh?
Beyond our site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so just rather note for all of us to say how we're gonna get that to work, because it's important. I wasn't a reflection on you.
Okay, I just wanted to understand, I mean, we're very interested in making the connection to the north, it would be a phase 2 development. The south, I think, is maybe beyond.
No,
this,
it
but
is,
yeah.
and that was the note for ourselves. This is work that we need to do.
Okay, good. Board discussion.
Well, so Mr. Chairman, in the process of getting my questions answered, I made general comments, which would have been my board comments, but I'd like to reinforce the improvement of the copper ceiling, really think well done in the way that you integrate adjacencies. So it really looks nice, and the shadow lines that are created are reflected well on your plan, but I think they will be shown well when you construct. And the contextual photographs that have been used during the presentation are, I think, right on. I think you pick up on details and show that really appropriately and adequately reflect the history of Charleston, but you're also bringing your own flair in with it, and I think that's awesome.
I'll jump in and I'll say I appreciate the applicant reconfiguring the balconies and acknowledging that that's actually a better look for the building. I think it does a service to it. And I think it also that barrel vault without any structural element looked a little tacked on. Now you've got something that's much more integrated and actually much more interesting, I think. And it is complementary to those storefronts on the first floor. I think the material palette is, and the coloration of it is very thoughtful. The only thing that I would encourage the applicant not to do is not mistake refinement for any kind of value engineering on this detail, because I think that a lot of the beauty of the building, particularly on the metalwork, is in the level of detail. So don't let the refinement strip out the level of detail that we currently see. Other than that, the fenestration changes, I'm fine with it. I would just bring up procedurally, being consistent on things like the metal grill work versus the transom style windows is important to know what it looks like, but it sounds like that was just a good faith mistake rather than a big programmatic issue. I think that's it for me.
I think all this building was going right from get-go, so it's just refinements of the details and listening to our concerns is really appreciated. And I think this will be one of the finest buildings in at least on Main Street.
Further board comments?
My only concern goes back to Horlbeck Alley, and that even with the inclusion of the balconies is making it look more like the more modern apartment buildings that have been built in Charleston over the past few years. I think it actually detracts from the architectural style that is beautiful on the rest of the building. Charleston is known for the consistent and repetitive fenestration. So the consistent punches were comfortable to me. So we don't necessarily need to activate the higher floors when the street level is already being activated. Everything else, I can agree with the vast majority of what my colleagues have shared. The tunnel is just really excellent, really excellent.
Mr. Chairman, I forgot to ask one question on the
Sure.
On the palette. There was something called sage green, and maybe it was used on the balcony. What is that material?
It is on the balconies and the metalwork. It's a kind art
Oh,
coating
it's a kind of on top of what? It's just a
on aluminum.
aluminum with counter coating.
Further board comments or questions at this time? Or a motion?
So do we move on item number?
Well, I get a sense, without making any presuppositions, I get the sense of the room that we're okay with both of these presentations regardless of how it came to pass. So I don't know that one affects the other. I would suggest we vote on this one and then just roll back into the other.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion for approval of 155 Meeting Street Hotel, preliminary approval with board and staff comments
Board and staff comments and conditions.
and conditions.
Okay. And there's a second from Ms. Sobchak, so it's an order. Mr. Brown?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Matters?
Yay in favor.
Ms. Sobchak?
Yay in favor.
Myself, yay in favor on the hotel piece. Because it was made in proper order for Mr. Brown, we automatically rolled back into item 3, which was tabled. We don't need a motion for that. It's just been moved in the agenda. And I will open it at this point where we left it, which was board discussion or a motion.
So I'll make a motion for preliminary approval for site improvements with board and staff comments.
Preliminary approval for site improvements incorporating board and staff comments and staff conditions, correct?
Staff had more conditions.
So it's good. No staff. Very good. Staff comments and board comments. Is there a second to that motion? I'll second it. It's in proper order. Mr. Brown, how do you vote?
No, not in favor.
Mr. Matters?
Yay in favor.
Ms. Sobchak?
Board comments like design of the
That would include your comments related to the directional paving,
Okay.
which you and I disagreed on, very much respect. And there were comments in there about reconsideration and restudy of at least 2 aspects that I brought up, which were the punch brick walls and the curving.
okay. Yeah.
That would also be your directional paving.
Yeah, in fact.
Okay. and myself, yay in favor. So passes 3-1. If, it sounds like some consideration on the landscape piece specific to the comments we made would be well considered, as well as some material conditions. But thank you to the applicant, and we'll look forward to seeing you at final and at mock-up, whatever that is. Okay, very good. That concludes our regular agenda. Thank you, BD. Great job tonight.
Yeah.
All right, see you, Stuart. Y'all stay